family, this is Pastor Todd Johnson from Second Baptist Church at a House of Hope. I hope you're enjoying this wonderful month we call Black History Month. And at Second Baptist Church, we always celebrate Black History Month by honoring our heritage, the legacy of those who come before us, and the rich history that makes us who we are today. But not only are we celebrating Black History Month in the historic sense, but we are celebrating those who are making Black history right now. In particular, in 2021, at Second Baptist, we're celebrating Black entrepreneurship and Black business ownership right here in our own community. We'll be spotlighting Black-owned and operated businesses owned by Second Baptist Church members. And not only are we spotlighting our Black-owned businesses, but as a church, we are investing in our Black-owned businesses. I'm so pleased and proud to announce a special initiative that we will be sowing into those Black-owned businesses that are operated by our Second Baptist members with many grants to help support their operations, allow them to build inventory, invest in equipment and machinery, and do marketing to reach a broader demographic so that our Black businesses in this local area can flourish and grow. We know that Black power means having Black economic freedom. So as a church in our community, we want to sow into the lives of those who are helping to build a strong community right here and right now. Not only that, but it is my dream and my vision to sow into Black-owned and operated businesses beyond our church. Many of you witnessed us as we embarked on the Big Give, our Christmas initiative to reach out to families in the local area. And this February for Black History Month, and to help our local Black businesses, we want to institute the Big Give once again. I call it the Big Give Black Business Edition. Not only are we going to be blessing and pouring into those members who own Black businesses within our church, but we want to bless some other Black businesses outside of this church to help encourage those who are emerging entrepreneurs to keep pushing towards their dreams. So you can visit www.secondbaptistwarren.com and you can give a donation to a fund that will allow us to extend many grants to several Black businesses in our area. I'll be meeting with those business owners within our church and creating a council to nominate and recognize those Black businesses that could receive this support. You all know that we can't do this alone, so I'm asking you to help us to not only be a blessing to our businesses, but a blessing to our families and our community. Once again, go to www.secondbaptistwarren.com and click on Big Give and give a donation of any size. It will go into one Black business grant fund, and we'll be blessing Black businesses in our area over the coming weeks. I thank you so much for your love and your support, and I welcome you to continue worshiping and engaging with us here at Second Baptist Church, a House of Hope. Take care. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for what we call Our Journey, Our Story, a special conversation with some very special guests. My name is Pastor Todd Johnson from Second Baptist Church, a House of Hope in Warren, Ohio, and I thank you so much for joining us for this special program. I love history. I love my Black culture. So it's only natural that I love Black history. I'm a student of history, and as a young man, it's always been my passion to read and find out about where we've come from and the journey that we've taken. And I have to say that being blessed to be the shepherd at Second Baptist Church, one of our historic churches in the region, in fact, in the state and the nation, has even enhanced that appreciation of our history. And this month, in spite of the pandemic and in spite of all that is happening in our world, or maybe I should say because of all that's happening in our world, I felt that it was necessary for us to take special time out to acknowledge our local Black history. I want you to do me a favor if you're watching us, if you're joining us, please share this video, tag somebody in this video, say hello if you're watching, let us know that you're watching. This is the type of program that we need more of in our community. This is the type of interaction and engagement that will build us as a people. You've heard it said so many times, and the saying is true. Unless you know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. And our special guests are going to help us have a view, some clarity on where we come from. And I also believe they can give us some wisdom on where we're going. Many of you remember last month on Martin Luther King Day, I hosted a conversation with 3 elder individuals from the Warren community. We had Pastor Elder Ronald Fowlis, who I affectionately consider my papa. I love him so dearly. Mother Irene Reed, the founding First Lady of New Freedom Missionary Baptist Church and one of Second Baptist's own members. And the legendary, the man himself, David Sonny Morgan, longtime activist and leader in our community. And they poured so much wisdom and knowledge out. And I wanted to follow up with that for Black History Month. So as you're sharing, as you're commenting, I want you to know that this conversation includes you. We're going to hear stories from where we're coming, where we've come from. We're going to hear stories about key events over the past half century or so that lead up to where we are now. And we're going to hear differing perspectives on where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guests for tonight. And I just want to say that I'm honored and privileged that these 2 gentlemen have taken the time out to speak to me. And I want to say what I said last time. Our older generation have really done a fantastic job of being able to engage with us in technology, and even their family members and grandchildren and children, to make sure that between generations, we're able to keep communicating in this new era. So our first guest who will join the panel is an individual who has long been known in the city of Warren. Sister Irene, working in politics, former safety service director in the city of Warren, has engaged and been sought after as an individual of wisdom and strategy, and one who has brought together many resources to better the Black community. Not only that, but he's working on historic projects to help preserve our Black history, to tell our story right here in the Mahoning Valley. And our second guest is a well-known pastor in our area, has pastored in Ashtabula, raised right here in Warren under his father's ministry. I respect him and love him and his family. And I want you to welcome and put your digital hands together for Mr. Fred Harris and Elder David Howard Jr. Let's welcome them to the Second Baptist Church, Our Story, Our Journey conversation. Put your little digital hands together. I know I can't hear you or see you, but you can put your little emojis up, your little symbols up, all of you who are watching. And brothers, my friends, I'm so grateful that you would be with me tonight, that you would be a part of this program tonight. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having us, Pastor.
I'm excited to be here.
Yes, sir. We're excited to have you. I wanted to talk to 2 elder members of our community. We know now that it is not a shame to be of age, because that means God has brought you quite some way, and you have a story to tell. Mr. Harris, could you tell us how old you are?
Thank you for asking, Pastor. I'm 77 years old. I'm proud to be 77 years old. You know,
wonderful.
I'm still a young man.
I know you are. I know you are. And Elder Howard, how old are you? Would you give us your age?
83.
Amen. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yes, sir.
It's a pleasure to have both of you. And so it goes without saying that both of you have lived some life, seen some things, experienced some things, and gained some wisdom. And to all of you who are joining us and watching, again, thank you. Please like and share. I see your comments. I see you all who are joining us, and I'll be highlighting some of your comments. If you have a question as our conversation progresses, you can type it in the comments. Please don't talk to your screen because we can't hear you. If you have a question, type it in the comments, and if I see it and it fits our conversation, we'll add it in to the conversation. So first, I want to just get a little bit of background on the both of you. I'll start with Elder Howard. If you can just tell me a little bit about where you were born and raised, and I know you weren't originally from the city of Warren and from this area. Can you tell us how you got up here, when you came up here?
I came up in 58. I was born in Mississippi, in Tallahatchie County. Tallahatchie was a section where people was treated wrong. So in 1965, I was aware to know the man that killed Emmett Till. I know those people. We stayed at 2 locations, the same place. We stayed, when we came here, we came from a little town called Tutwiler, Mississippi. And then before we come to Tutwiler, we lived in a place called Money, Mississippi. That's where the men that killed Emmett Till, they was in Money, Mississippi. Money, Mississippi is only a store in a cotton gin. And I was a cotton picker in Mississippi. I could pick 400 pounds of cotton. And most people couldn't pick that much cotton. My daddy could pick 400. My daddy was a friend to Emmett Till's grandfather. So therefore, that's what I'm about, what I'm going to tell you a little bit more about.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's already so much that I didn't know, and I appreciate you. Mr. Harris, give us a little bit of your background and your family background, where you're from.
I was born right here in Warren, Ohio. Okay, I was born here, was raised here. I went to school here. My family's here, but I had the privilege of traveling all over the world. And you know what really bothers me is I hear people talk about the racism that took place in the South. That same racism took place right here in Warren, Ohio. I had the opportunity to spend time in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and that was in the early 1960s. And I can really tell you some stories about that. That set the pattern for my entire life when I seen the type of racism that was practiced in the South. But that same racism was practiced right here in the city of Warren, and I'll talk about that later.
I appreciate it. Mr. Harris, when you were talking about that northern racism, and Elder Fowler's talked about being down in the Dayton area, the Springfield area, how that was really considered Southern, because to be in Southern Ohio, you might as well, so close to the Mason-Dixon, you might as well be down South. They treated the same way. What were some of the differences, do you think, in the way it was practiced or seen in those days?
The difference was, here in Warren, Ohio, it was the type of racism that was behind closed doors, okay? And they just said, well, you're not welcome here. As an example, when I bought my first house, when I was married, I bought my first house in here in Warren. I couldn't finance that house through the bank. I had to buy it on land contract and make payments to an individual for a year. And after 12 months, that individual flew back from California, went with me to the bank and vouched for me so that the bank would finance that house in Palmar Heights. That's the kind of racism we practiced here. Now, when I was in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, different type of racism down there. They didn't play games. They just said, no, you colored people can't come in here. And if you do come in here and you buy something, when you give us your money, you better thank us for giving your money. You better say, yes, sir. That's the kind of racism we practice down there. But the same type of racism up here, it was just behind closed doors. But it was here, right here in the city of Warren.
Yes, sir. With Elder Howard about that, my wife and I had the chance to go down to Montgomery, Alabama. I had a chance to marry a young lady who was close to our family. And when we were down there, they created a museum down there, the Equal Justice Initiative. and they have a lynching museum and memorial down there, and all of the individuals all over the country who were lynched, they're memorialized there. And when you hear the stories, Mr. Harris just talked about, you had to say yes sir, no ma'am, sometimes get off the street when they were coming your way. You know, certainly black men, you know, can't be caught, you know, with a white woman or offending a white man or white woman. And I was struck by how petty and minor some of the offenses were, Elder Howard, that brought on, like the Emmett Till situation. The smallest things could bring forth death for a black man or a black woman. And like Mr. Harris said, they didn't play. You talked about Emmett Till, but what was the overall feeling of having to know your place down there? How was that lived out when you were coming up?
It wasn't too good. See, my dad bought, as I said, a brand new car in 1953. And this, so the white people didn't like it because we had a car with a turn signal. They had to use their hand. So a lot of time we went someplace, they would get behind us and run us and try to catch us. We outran.
Wow.
So that was the type of situation we was in.
Did you feel, Brother Howard, that when you got in certain situations, you had to mind yourself a certain way so that?
That is true. That's right. Yes, sir. See, we used to be walking to school. The white kids would pass by in the bus, and they'd throw rocks at us. And we were walking, and they were making fun of us. So those are the kind of situation we grew up in. So I'm very familiar. Yes,
now,
sir.
Your father, David Howard Sr., he had a limited education. Now, was that because he had to leave school? Did he have to go work? Did he have to support the family? What was the story with that?
My father was put out at the age of 17.
Okay.
His father put him out. And Dad, he was very aggressive. He could really do things. So a lot of people was jealous of him. Even he had some difficulty. He built the church. He took over a church, had 6 members, and in a few weeks it had grown to 70.
Wow. And
white people would even come to our church. We had good musicians, good singers, so we always had a crowd. Yes, sir.
Wow. And you said that created jealousy. Was that a part of him feeling like he had to go ahead and come up north for a better life for the family?
Well, Daddy had 4 boys, and I'm the oldest boy. So he had jealous black people and ungrateful white people. So that's what motivated him to come to Ohio. Emmett Till. You see, and Emmett Till was the main reason why that I am here in Warren.
Wow. So
today I'm grateful to my father for looking out for us. We didn't have to worry about, even though there was racism here, but we did not, like Fred said, it was it wasn't as bad, but it was here.
Yeah.
And it's still here.
Yes,
it's
sir.
Better.
Yes, sir.
but
Mr. Harris,
better.
Mr. Harris, Elder Howard just talked about how his father got it from both sides. How you had black jealousy, you had white oppression and pressure. Did you see that coming up where sometimes we could sabotage ourselves or hurt ourselves in our own efforts in the fight for equality and justice?
Yes, it is still being done today. Okay? And that's why you hear me say, united we stand, divided we fall. All right? Racism, and this makes me very angry, you know, and I've been accused of being an angry black man, but I have a reason to be angry. Okay? I watched my father. My father worked in the steel mill. Most of the blacks that came up here from Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, they came up here because of the steel mills. My father, Herbert Caldwell's father, Doug Franklin's father, Helen Rucker's father, they all worked in the steel mill. That's what they had in common. Most people don't realize that the steel mills was segregated until 1974. It took a consent decree to desegregate the steel mills. I watched what my father went through. I watched how when he bought the house over there on 4th Street on the west side, around the corner from your church, he couldn't buy that land. He had to have a white man buy it for him and then resell it to him because the bank would have never financed this. I watched in the early 60s when Bob Sappho, who was the first black fireman in this city, and we had to march on the banks for fair housing and so that we can live anywhere in the city of Warren. That was right here in Warren. And I tell my grandson all the time, never take elderly people for granted. Never forget whose shoulders you stand upon, because my generation was the last generation that was born under legal segregation. It was legal to tell you, you can't come in here because you're colored. Okay? See, we wasn't black in them days, we was colored. You can't come in here. Now, a quick story. Warren Harding High School. This story was told by Gene Slaughter and Woody Hayes was sitting right on the stage. Woody Hayes, the coach of Ohio State, right there at the Packard Music Hall. Paul Warfield, Willie Sims, Willie Jones, Bobby Sims, they were the first 3 black kids to ever start for Harding High School in the history of that school. After the ball game that night, Coach Slaughter got a call from the Booster Club that asked him to meet them behind the stadium. Now, this story was told on the stage of Packard Music Hall when we honored Paul Warfield. Coach Slaughter said he called Dr. Logan, and the reason why he called Dr. Logan to go with him, because he knew Dr. Logan carried a 38. When they met with the Booster Club informed Coach Slaughter, we don't do things like this in the city of Warren. We don't put 3 black kids in the same back at the same time. We don't do that. We play the white kids. Okay. Now that was Paul Warfield, who went to the Hall of Fame, Willie Jones, who went on a football scholarship to Ohio State, and Bobby Sims, who made Little All-American in college. All right?
Yes, sir.
That story was told right here on the stage of Packard Music Hall. Now, that wasn't Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. That was Warren, Ohio, right here.
Right. Yes, sir. One of our questions, and I'm going to piggyback off of this question and kind of ask the both of you to help walk us through a few things that we often read about in books, but that you were alive to see. So Elder Howard already talked about being close to the family and his grandfather and father being close to the families of Emmett Till's family and how that brought them up north, like many were a part of that second migration up north, as Mr. Harris said, to the steel mills, the better living and the not so violent racism, if you will. But when you saw things like Dr. King, Mr. Harris, now you would have been about how old when Dr. King was a major figure? And what did you think of him, and what did people around you think of him in the civil rights movement? I'm talking the I Have a Dream speech, the marches, the Voting Rights Act.
I'm glad you asked me that question. You had Dr. Martin Luther King on one hand, and you had Malcolm X on the other hand.
Mm-hmm.
I was with Malcolm X. My generation was right on the fence.
Mm-hmm.
I seen the nonviolence. I seen what happened. I was down there in the military. I was down there in Alabama, Dothan, Alabama, and Georgia. And I seen those women when they turned those fire hoses on them and they sicked them dogs on the women or on the children. I said, I can't go along with that. So I was a Malcolm man. And I see at the beginning of your program, you had the clenched fists. Okay? That denoted Black power. That came from Stokely Carmichael, Rap
Yes,
Brown. You see, I was with the militant faction. I said, no, if they step on your foot, step on their throat. But it took the Martin people, the Martin Luther King and the Malcolm X people to put us in the position we're in today. Okay? Because Malcolm and Martin worked together. That's what people don't understand. Now, who would you rather deal with? Would you rather deal with Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, the Black Panthers? Would you rather deal with Martin Luther King? Martin made Malcolm made Martin a hero. And that was good because it benefited all of our people. It put us in the position we're in today, a better position.
Yes, sir. Pastor Howard, with your father being a pastor and you followed him into the ministry, how was the church responding to the civil rights movement back in those days, both in Mississippi and up here in Warren? Were you talking about it in church? What was it supported?
Well, not as much as it should have been. Now, I'm a little radical.
Okay.
So I've always have spoken how I feel, but the church wasn't pleasing to me and supporting how they should have. But I mean, it's the Church of God in Christ, but we came through. Thank God we made it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not alone, because I think, and again, it's from a younger perspective, those of us who are younger, who see the videos, we see the books, we will think that everybody was pouring out of their churches to march with Dr. King. You know, everybody was getting on buses to go to Washington, D.C. But then when you look at the statistics from the era, there were just as many churches that would rather not cause trouble or would rather stay out of the fray, or they thought there was another way besides bringing it to the streets, putting people in harm's way. And then there were pockets of people, not erroneous, we're not wrong, but they felt that their higher goal was heaven, their higher goal is spirituality. So
yes,
let's not get mixed up in all that political stuff. You hear some of that, right, Howard?
That is true. Very 100%.
Yes, sir. And
yes,
give me a little bit, Elder Howard, when you saw what Mr. Harris talked about, some of the more militant Black power movement come forward.
I had great respect for Dr. King. He's been to our national meeting and has spoken. So I just thought he was the man to follow.
Yeah.
Non-violent. So he was a great speaker, great preacher, and I admired him quite a bit.
What did you think when you started to see the Black Power movement, the Black Panthers, more of the, some of those younger ones, like Mr. Harris said, they were tired of marching. They wanted to fight back. They wanted to get guns. How did you feel when you saw that?
Fighting was not going to get it. See, we had to stand up for what's right. Now, that is the way to make some people consider, but that wasn't the way I was thinking. I was thinking on a peaceful mind. See, and my brother and my sisters, I thank God that my sister, Sister Heron, she used to drive us to school. Mm-hmm. Daddy told her how to drive, and she would drive us to school every day. So I'm just thankful that we have Martin Luther King. See, there is a person for everybody. Yes, I thank God for you, brother. Dr. Johnson, you doing a good job.
God bless
you. Appreciate you, my brother.
God bless you. God bless you.
Yes.
I want to move forward a little bit. There was a lot of talk about after Dr. King being assassinated and how the movement lost steam and there was a vacuum in leadership. You're talking 68 through the 70s, on through. How did you see, Mr. Harris, the Black community and even the Black churches and organizations, how did you see them moving forward after that heyday, if you will, of what we call the civil rights movement?
We didn't move forward, we moved backwards. When we lost Dr. Martin Luther King, we lost Malcolm X. We lost two of the key leaders in the Black movement. They were gone. And after that, there was a leadership vacuum, and it's still there today. All right? We started living good as Black people. We thought we was living good. We didn't do a good job of passing our history on to our young people and explain to them how we get in the position we got. Along came this white fellow named Dr. Spock. He was a psychologist. And he convinced Black people that children were like little people. They were little people. See, we never raised our children like that. We were raised, if your mother or father or grandfather told you to do something, you did it until you was 18, 19 years old, and then you went on about your business. But we was trained that way. We start raising our children like white children. We start giving them everything. See? And we made the biggest mistake. We didn't teach our children our history. They have no idea whose shoulders they stand up on. Now, they go to college. We did a good job. They go to college, but they don't understand the difference between an education and wisdom. They have the education, they're smart, but they don't have the wisdom. So we went backward. It's not their fault. It's my generation's fault because we started living good. We thought we was living good. And I think we made a bad mistake because the civil rights movement died.
I appreciate you mentioning that. Pastor Howard, did you see any shifts in the church or in the focus? We all know Dr. King's last sermon was at Mason Temple on April 3rd in 1968. A lot of people overlooked that his last sermon was at Mason Temple, and that they opened doors during the sanitation strike for that rally that night. After he was assassinated, did you see a change in the church or a change in the community? Maybe, as Mr. Harris said, away from or towards working for civil rights?
Well, yes, there was a change. Some people split off after then, but basically we have continued the same.
Yeah.
Now, right now, there was a difference. Right now, the young people think they know what to do, they know how to do. But the church is not as strong as it used to be. Because we got too many folks think they know, they won't listen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can't, I try to tell them, you cannot beat experience. See, I say you might know, you can do the internet or whatever, but you can't beat the experience. And thank God for it.
Yes, sir. I want to talk about that because Mr. Harris mentioned about we as Black families, and that can come from the family to the church to our community organizations. We changed the way we were raising children. And I know the era you were raised in. I know how you raised your children. I know how my daddy raised me. Me and my wife talk about we were the last of the Mohicans, that we didn't have a choice. We didn't have a choice whether to go to church. We didn't have a choice whether to get up and go to school. We were raised on yes, sir, and no, ma'am, and
that's right.
Good values. When did you start to see, as Mr. Harris said, those values start to change, and how did that affect our community, our churches, our spirituality? That's for you, Brother Howard.
Well, we want to be like the white folk. My brother Eddie, when he was a little boy, he used to take my mother's powder his face. I'm a white boy. So we thought that they know what to do. If you wasn't light skinned, you was ugly, you had to be bright or good hair. See, we got caught up in that. And we have buried away from the real principle. See, so therefore, we're not like we used to be. Like you were saying, Dr. Johnson, that after 10 years, things gonna be different. And they are different now. I've been pastoring for 42 years.
Wow.
But I'm about ready to quit now.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Brother Harris.
If I can elaborate on that just for a minute.
Please.
Where I seen the change come in, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton came along, it was a different type of church. Dr. Martin Luther King walked amongst the people. He flew coach class when he flew on airplanes. When he did go to a city to talk, he stayed with the people. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton kind of changed things around. It became how much money, everything is money. You see? And it went away from the civil rights movement to this prosperity type of thing. Now, I believe in church. I pray every night. But I think you should go to church. But after you finish praying in church, you get up with your knees, you walk out into the secular world, then you have to fight. God gave you wisdom. He gave you strength. He gave you knowledge. God gave you everything you need. But I think we're taught today to depend too much, that God is going to do it for us. And God saying, no, you're human. You do it. I gave you everything you need to do. Now go do the job. And that's where I be to see the biggest change, because Martin Luther King understood that. He walked amongst the people and he said, let's go. He was a leader. Malcolm X was a leader. We don't have that nowadays.
Wow. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Brother Howard, he talked about how the churches have changed over time. And I know in this day and age, we live in the era of mega ministries and the health and wealth gospel. And Mr. Harris is talking about how we've shifted from doing the work. And I just don't mean in civil rights. I mean in raising our families, working hard, leaving a legacy for your families. Did you see a change in the church where even in the Black church, even the Holiness Church, the Pentecostal churches, they started to get away from the principles that they were raised on and started kind of chasing other things?
Yes, sir. I really have seen that. And right now, the church doesn't have the strength that it used to have. I'm sorry to say that, but the older people, they believed in healing. Now the scripture said, be not ignorant. God don't want us to be stupid and crazy. He said, be not ignorant. Now, so therefore, we have to use some good common sense. People now, I'm not raising my child like that. So they got away from the real principle. That's what has happened. It's weaker now. So I'll tell you, I don't know.
That's all right. I appreciate it. I want to switch gears to your professional lives and how you accomplish various things, through, in your case, Brother Howard, Elder Howard, the ministry, in your case, Mr. Harris, politics and in public service. And I want to start with you, Mr. Harris. Tell us a little bit about your journey professionally, when you felt like, your calling, because everything you do in life is a calling in one way or another. Where some of your best work was and how you served, the Black community.
Well, I'm going to surprise some people. I never wanted to be involved in politics. I couldn't care less about politics. I never wanted to be in politics. I wanted to be a businessman. Okay? That was my aspiration in life. I wanted to be a businessman. But a strange thing kept happening. I kept getting pulled back over into helping people. When I helped people, I was successful. When I tried to do things in business and make money, it didn't work out for me. So I went into hibernation for a couple of years. And a guy, Nick Angelo, who was a business manager for Orange City Schools, he called me one day and he said, I need you to do a favor. I need you to with the school levy, to serve as a co-chairman with Judge Griffin. I didn't want to do it. So he begged me, but I owed him a favor. So I said, okay, I'll do it. As co-chairman, I had to work with the president of the school board. The president of the school board, his name was Hank Angelo. Him and I started talking, and he told me one day, I'm going to run for mayor. And when I run for mayor, would you help me? And I said, yeah, I was just talking, off the top of my head. A year later, he called me and he said you was going to help me. So him and I met at the Mocha House and we talked for a couple hours. And he said, wow, you know a lot about politics. I need you to run my campaign. Well, the rest was history. He became mayor and he asked me, you have to come with me. And that's how I wound up as director of public safety and service in the city. I never cared about politicians. In fact, I had a disrespect for politicians, and I still do today.
Wow. I think just about everybody does nowadays. Elder Howard, your father is legendary as a pastor in the Church of God in Christ and respected beyond. The St. James Church of God in Christ. You talked about how he moved up here. Tell us a little bit about how he established that church and then how you got started in ministry and where you ended up pastoring.
Well, my dad used to go around and conduct revivals. And he was known, in fact, I knowing my dad to pray for a lady that had a stroke. And when he prayed for her hand just stretched out. Dad, I was used to follow him around, played the guitar, and they had another young man played the piano. So whatever Dad was preaching, well, it would go into me. And that's just where that's how I got started. I think I was started preaching about when I was about 16 or 17. And Dad, when I was a little boy, I used to love to go to church. I would cry whenever they go to church. If they wouldn't let me go, I would just cry. And they started taking me. So therefore, our family was close together. And let me tell you, I know you didn't ask me that. In 1965, 55, no, 65, when Emmett Till came to Money, Mississippi, where his grandfather lived, the white folks said that the white woman said he whistled at her. No, he did not. And they killed him. They wanted to teach him a lesson. They went to his grandfather's house and got him, and they killed him and put him in the West Tallahatchie River. Anybody know anything about South Tallahatchie River? Now, what happened? Whatever they did to him, they didn't want to show his body. But his grandmother, I believe, had it shown so people all over the world could see it. And that lady bothered her so bad by her lying. She told the truth. She's dead now, but she told the truth before she died. So he did not whistle at her. So therefore, that's what motivated my dad to get us out the South. Because he had 5 boys and he didn't want to have to be worrying about that. Because he knew we were going to get no justice. They had the trial in another place called Sumner, Mississippi. Sumner, Mississippi was 5 hours from where we live. When they had these young men's trial, they sat up in court drinking Coca-Cola.
Wow.
And they was planning on fighting the NAACP. So whenever you got in trouble there, all those people somewhere involved. So you couldn't get no justice.
Wow. And when your father moved up to Warren, did he move to Warren first? Did he move anywhere else? Did he start the church right away?
No, he came to Warren.
Okay.
Came to Warren, and so he worked at the Warren Hotel for a while.
Okay. Downtown.
Yes. And then he went over they call it Sharon Line. That's over McGuffey Heights. Went over there and started the church. He bought a building over there, started having service. And then we decided we want to come back to Warren. And he also had a church in Alliance and Majory.
Okay.
He had 3 churches at one while. But he's always been a church worker.
What year was that roundabout?
Well, it had to be in the 70s. Yeah, in the 70s. Late 70s. And the material some else I experienced.
Yes, sir.
Daddy bought this 53 Chevy. And I don't know what happened, but I was driving 23rd day of December. I'm driving, we're going away to church. And some white boys passed me and got right in front of me and they're going to make a left turn. When I put foot on the brake to slow down, I had no brakes. I had to hit somebody coming or going. So I hit a white man from Jackson, Mississippi. And the state trooper took me into some little Mississippi little town, took me in the back of the paper print office and charged me $10 for improper passing. Yes, sir. But he was nice to me.
Yes, sir.
God just favored me. We didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
Tore our car.
Well, one more question for you. When did you get started pastoring? And everybody might not know, where do you pastor? When did you get started pastoring? When did your father send you out to pastor?
Well, Dad told me, you see, I was off of the church in another jurisdiction. And my dad told me, go ahead, try it. You don't, if you don't make it, come on back home.
Yes, sir.
Then after I did that, that was 42 years ago. Hiawatha, Church of God in Christ. I
Yes,
took
sir.
that over. And the Lord had really blessed me since then. So I'm about ready to retire.
Yes,
It's
sir.
on the list. Yes, sir. So
Well, you've done a great work.
but anyway, I love the ministry. I always did love church.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
You've done a great work. I've been to Hiawatha in Ashtabula, and Pastor Howard has a beautiful church
thank you.
there in Hiawatha. I've attended service with my buddy Tedrick and been up there, and it's always been a pleasure to see you preaching. And of course, you always come down here Sunday nights. When I would slip into St. James, I see you coming in and always giving a good word. And I appreciate
Bless
that
you.
anointing on your life, on your family life, Pastor Melvin, Superintendent Nehemiah, everybody that shares in the ministry. Mr. Harris, we got a few questions, and I want to share some of those questions with you, and I want to hear your wisdom as we kind of close out and some of your perspective based on what you've seen. One of our questions that came in is what does the future hold for the next generation? What do you think the future holds in the Black community for the next generation? I'll start with you, Mr. Harris.
That's an interesting question. And I talk to my grandson about this all the time. There again, they have to understand the difference between education and wisdom. If they listen to the older generation, because history, everything just goes around in a circle. You heard the saying, what goes around comes around. And if you listen, you'll be a lot further ahead. I see good things and I see bad things. I see good things when I watched television here last summer, when they had the marches, and I seen something that I didn't ever think I would see in my lifetime. I seen white kids and black kids all walking, holding their fists in the air. Okay? This generation coming up is the most integrated generation in the history of this country. Things are changing. If the older generation would step back, it's the younger generation's turn now. Let them come forward, and I think we'll see some changes. The problem I see is that the older generation, they still refuse to step back, especially the politicians. But the good things I see in the future is the younger people, white and black, they are coming together. They're meshing together a lot better than what I expected they would. So that's very encouraging right there. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Pastor Howard, what do you see for our future as a Black community, especially the Black church community? What do you see in the direction we're going in? What do you hope to see as well?
Well, I tell you, I am saddened what I see. Now, just like my people in Ashtabula, I got some young people that they don't think like they should. See, my Bible tells me in Ecclesiastes that there's nothing new. All is what happened has already been. So therefore, I am saddened because they don't have the concern. They come in, they want to see this is not this is not a microwave ministry. See, microwaves it get hot quick and it get cold quick.
Yeah.
So we need some cook some more peas and neck bone. I'm just using that, but
Yes,
that's
sir.
what we
Yes,
need.
sir.
We need some real food, and they can't hardly stand real food because there it is. It
Pastor
is
Todd,
what it is.
I hear you. That patience and time you have to put in. I hear what you're saying, Elder Howard. That willingness to put in the time, the work,
Yes, sir.
the patience, and in the ministry sense, make sure you're called and be respectful of your elders, your wisdom, serving. I definitely understand. We are a microwave generation. We were raised on microwave fish nuggets and chicken nuggets and fast food and and all of that. And I
Yes, sir.
appreciate that. You want to add to that, Mr. Harris? Go ahead, Mr.
Pastor
Harris.
Todd, my opinion, there has to be some changes in the Black church. There has to be some changes. This is not the church of my father, my grandfather. This is a different generation. This is a generation with technology. They're far advanced. And if the Black church doesn't adapt and make changes, I see bad things on the horizon. You're losing your membership. Okay? You have to make some changes. I studied the Catholic religion. I studied them because I said, what are they doing? And I watched the changes they made over time. You remember the time when a Catholic couldn't eat meat on Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Remember those days?
Yes, sir.
They made the change. They adapted to the time. You see, we can't do the same thing we did 100 or 200 years ago. We have to start changing. That's just my opinion. I'm outside the church. I'm not like you guys. You guys are in the church. I'm watching. I'm looking from the outside. But this is what I observe from talking to younger people. When I ask them, why don't you go to church?
And I appreciate that, Mr. Harris. One thing we would say as ministers and preachers, that the message does not change. The truth of God doesn't change. The Bible doesn't change. Some of our methods we saw with the pandemic, having to get online. Nobody wants to preach to a camera. Nobody wants to preach to a phone. But if you learn how to embrace the tools at our disposal. Now, once upon a time, technology changes. They didn't want you to have organs in the church. And then after that, they didn't want you to have keyboards in the church. They didn't want drums in the church, and times changed. And now we have all of those things in the church. But I think the key is, as Elder Howard said earlier, we have to keep the message and our core principles at the forefront. We have to keep the values passed down from our parents. If I wasn't raised by my parents and grandparents to be respectful, I would have nothing to give my children. If I wasn't raised with the fear of God, I wouldn't have anything to give my children. But my children read their Bible on tablets. So I make sure they have apps and they can get on YouTube, and they know my daughter. Now, when I was coming up, it wasn't that long ago. I'm only 38. I was helping my father by playing the keyboards or the organ. I was helping my father by being with him. Now my daughter helps me by doing our streaming and our video, and she's 12. And she might not ever learn an instrument, but she'll learn how to do things to help the ministry out so that she can help me along in the future. Both of you have told a lot, and we had a great question at the beginning, and I wanted to wait to ask it. And I wanted to wait till the end to ask it. And this came from an individual who asked, and I'll ask you first, Elder Howard. You were involved in NAACP. You were involved in the Ministerial Alliance. You were right there beside Brother Fowlis and Brother Morgan and all the fighters in those days. This person asked the question, did you ever think you would still be talking about racism 70 years later? Did you think you would still have to address racism like this after all these years?
No, sir. I'm sorry, but no, sir. I never thought that way. But I see what's happening. So the scripture tells me to be not ignorant.
Yes,
so
sir.
we have to do things. We have to make some changes. Some methods may have to change.
Yes,
but
sir.
our word, the knowledge won't change.
Yes, sir. And I've been to church enough with your family to know that y'all say you do it God's way.
That's right. That's it.
You can tell
Watch
I've been
out
with
now.
Howard a little bit. You can tell I've been with the family a little bit.
Oh, God bless you. All right. God bless
I
you,
know.
young man.
I never, and that's how you know, and I want to say that to everybody. I never had the privilege of personally meeting Dad Howard. I never personally met Superintendent Howard Sr. because I was a young man. But by meeting his family, his sons, his daughters, his grandchildren, his nieces and nephews, I have learned and seen a lot of what he passed down to them. And that's what
Thanks the Lord.
and legacy does. Legacy makes sure that the message never dies, even though people die. Even though God takes people out of this earth, the message never dies. Mr. Harris, I want to ask you the same question. Did you think you would still be talking some of the same things all these years later?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the reason why, and I tell our people this all the time, white privilege is called white privilege. And if you think for 1 minute white folks are going to give up that privilege without a fight, it's not going to happen. Because if it's reversed, we would probably do the same thing. And what makes me so angry is I tell people the only way you're going to make change come about, you have to get involved with those politicians, because everything you do in the United States of America is controlled by a politician. Here in the city of Warren, when I was safety service director, I would sit there at the council meeting and I would look out at the audience and I would see maybe 4 black people. And then usually it was the same black people. Black people don't get involved in the everyday life. You have to go to those county commissioner's office and you have to demand what is rightfully yours. Black people pay taxes. But the problem is we don't get involved in the game. So you go to church, you pray, then you get up off of your knees, you walk out into the secular world, and you say, okay, now I'm going to take what's mine. And this is where we're weak, because we don't do this. We expect people to give us things. They're not going to give us anything.
Right.
We have to take it.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Brothers, elders, I appreciate you so much. You are both my elders. I respect you. I am so grateful that you both gave us our perspective. And one thing I would say is that we heard from a 42-year pastor, a minister, son of a preacher, and we heard from someone who's worked in civic life and political life. And those things are not and do not have to be opposed to each other, even though we work in different areas. And Mr. Harris, you talked about getting up off your knees. That's what Frederick Douglass said. You know, I prayed for freedom, but I didn't get free till I got up off my knees and started running. And Brother Howard, you were a model. Elder Howard, you were a model for how to get involved in the community beyond the pulpit and marrying those worlds and being outspoken. And for that, I appreciate the both of you.
Bless you.
I would like both of you to leave us with one word of wisdom to everybody watching. If you would just start with Mr. Harris, and then I'll end with the minister. I'll end with the elder, the superintendent. But I want just one word of wisdom for everybody watching that you would like to leave with our people for Black History Month.
Don't give up the fight. Fight for what is rightfully yours. Don't assume that anybody's going to give you anything. If you really want it, learn how to take it, because that's the only way you'll get it.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Elder Howard.
I would say stimulate more life in service, educate, and you will make it. So therefore, let's do what's wise.
Yes, sir.
You know, being an alcoholic is not wise. Being a drug addict is not wise. We want you to be like you're supposed to be. God bless all of you. Wear your mask and get your flu shots.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
COVID shots.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you, Elder Howard. I wanted you to speak so much because I have not seen you as much in a lot of these forums and platforms, and I knew you had wisdom to share, and you shared it. and you've done a
Right.
great job. And Mr. Harris, you are a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and you continue in the fight. You know how much I appreciate and respect you, and I call you with questions. And I want everybody who's watching us tonight. I know we got a lot of viewers. I've been watching. I can see how many viewers we got. We got a lot of viewers, and your message is going all over the country. But I want everybody once again to give it up for Mr. Harris, Mr. Fred Harris, and Elder David Howard Jr. And we also want to thank their family members for helping them to get online with us today. So let's all, I see you all commenting. I see you all. A lot of your family was on tonight, Elder Howard. A lot of your nieces and nephews and grandchildren watching. And you represented the church. You represented the faith. You represented the Church of God in Christ very well. And Mr. Harris, brother, I call you Brother Harris because I'm still trying to get you back into the church, back on into second. I'm gonna keep praying that you make that walk now.
One day I'm coming.
How you keep the fight up and how we all have a role. And to all of my young brothers and sisters, I hope that those of you who tuned in, especially those of you who are like me, you're 40 and under, you're raising your families, maybe you're coming out of college, you're trying to mark out a space for yourself. I want all of you to know that we stand on broad, strong shoulders. I want you to know that we've come this far by faith. That's not a song, that's a reality. And I'll say it like this because I think I have it here with my two guests. We came this far by faith, and we came this far by a fight. And we need both of them if we're going to make it. We need faith, and we need to have a fight. If we don't have no fight, our faith won't help us. And if we don't have any faith, our fight won't get us very far. And I believe if we as the Black community, I'm specifically speaking to the Black church, if we learn how to put those elements together, with God on our side, with our feet to the ground, there's nothing we can't do. And we want to make a better future for our children the same way that they made a better future for us. My daddy worked so I could go to college. I know Elder Howard worked so his children and grandchildren can go to college. I know Mr. Harris worked so that his children can have a better life and grandchildren. And we have to stand up now and do the same thing. So gentlemen, I'm gonna take you out of the program, but don't leave yet. Don't click the off button. I'm gonna say goodbye to our guests, and let me make sure I have all my comments ready here because we have so many comments. It's just amazing how many people watched you. This is a great way to get the ministry out. Y'all make sure you pray for Elder Howard and the Hiawatha Church of God in Christ family. Make sure, and for the Howard family and Lady Howard, we give them our love. Mr. Harris giving you our love. God bless you. I'll talk to you both in just a few minutes. To everybody who joined us, thank you so much for being with us. I believe this was a fruitful and informative night. I was inspired and uplifted by Elder Howard, by Mr. Harris, because these voices are the voices of wisdom. They're the voices of knowledge. They're voices of truth. And you all know I have so much love for not just those who work in the church, but I have so much love for those who have worked in the secular side of the Black community so that we can have a better life with one another. I want to thank our Second Baptist family for tuning in and supporting. I want to thank every organization, every church, every individual who keeps the dream alive, who keeps the flame lit so that our children and our grandchildren will have a strong legacy and heritage to stand on. I want you to know that we are not just Black in February, but we're Black 365 days a year. And as I said earlier, if we keep the faith and we stay in the fight, and as our Howard family would say, as Dad Howard, they told me would say, do it God's way, I think we'll be all right. So thank you all so much for joining us. Please keep on praying, keep on pressing, and let's keep hope alive. God bless you and God keep you. You all take care.